Hello, and welcome back to... First off, let me thank you for falling for the clickbait title. There is a good reason for it, though. I'm going to talk about an event I just attended, a small RTT, this Saturday. Why it was important, why I'm using this title, this about the cheating and stuff. It's going to make sense here in a few minutes. And why it was such a positive thing, why it was such a great thing to do and be part of. So let's lay the foundations quickly. So my local gaming group, Gem Hammer, based in Dayton, which is Western Ohio. I'm not a native to Ohio, as you may know, but they're about an hour away from me, and that's where all my RTTs are generally at. They do a GT every year. Really great group. I've been with them since their first event a couple of years ago, right before COVID. And I go to almost every one. It's a super good group, really friendly, very welcoming, very competitive as well, but in a good way. Never any feels bads or anything like that. Some very strong players, very strong lists, a good variance of lists as well. So it's just an all-round great group to be part of, and I'm happy that I found them and am part of the local gaming scene there. So we do an RTT just about every month, and for December, Charles the TO a couple of months ago wanted to do something for charity, which they always support charities anyway. Part of the entry fee to the tournaments goes towards the pot to go to local charities anyway, but they wanted to do one specifically as an event, and decided to support St. Vincent de Paul, which is it's a church group or a religious non-profit that supports people having trouble finding shelter, low income, homeless potentially, not enough food, not enough clothes, things like that, that people that genuinely need help. And they chose to, or Gemhammer chose to support this local non-profit, or their Dayton branch of it at least. And there should be a link in the description and probably a pinned message where you can also donate to them, which I would very strongly ask you to do, because at this time of the year, the weather's cold, people are in genuine need, and organisations that can help and support them, it's a good thing to help them out. So that's really the reason why I put the clickbait title, so I can spread this around and hopefully draw some more people in. But I'll dive into that a little bit more later. So let me go on a bit more. So what we were asked to do, it was, let me preface this, it was a Highlander event with a mandatory Lord of War. So for anyone unfamiliar, a Highlander is you can only bring one of any unit type, any data sheet, with the exception to troops and transport. So you could bring multiple of the same troops choice or transport if you so desired. But other than that, your elites, heavies, etc. was limited to one use of the data sheet. So you couldn't spam very powerful units, what have you, depending on your particular army choice. So we were asked to bring items and or cash to donate towards the charity for the event. So Charles actually cut the entry fee in half, so we'd have more money available to donate. So that was great. And what you would do is every item you donated, whether there was a list of items that was requested, including clothing, food types, toiletries, that sort of stuff. Every item had a particular value attached to it, like 1 point, 3 points, 5 points, etc. And these would go towards, for every item you donated, you would gain those points, and they would go towards a resource you could use in the tournament. And I'm also going to break that down later. But it was like an alternative version of CP, charity points or something like that. And we had special abilities that you could unlock. So the more you donated, these abilities became more accessible to you over your 3 games, which is where the cheating comes in, because some of these abilities were absolutely ridiculous. Super fun, but ridiculous. And we will get into that, because I think this is a great idea to use for event organisers and TOs. As you know, these one-off kind of special events, but this time of year, a charity supporting event is great, and I think this is a good format that we need to push out there, and I want you to bring up to your local gaming groups or TOs or what have you. So whilst this was, a competitive event, people brought competitive lists and stuff, it was still all about the fun. Very much so, actually. And again, that's something I'm going to touch on. So let me go into the next section, which is talking about the event itself. So I'll start off a brief overview of my list. I'm not going to break down the games like crazy or anything. I'll just give you my list and my opponents, that sort of thing. So my list, obviously I ran World Eaters because that's all I ever do. Did have a Baden. Whilst this was a fun, friendlier event, I'm still a win at all cost player that will do absolutely everything to destroy my opponent. But no, I ran a Baden, and you'll kind of see why as I go through the list here. Then he didn't have his Warlord trait. We had Lord Discordant with Flames of Spite. It's just a great build. I'd love to put the Gorget on there as well, but I didn't have the CP. We had a Warpsmith with Eternal Vendetta. Eternal Vendetta is core units within 6 of the Warpsmith can reroll wounds against a target you choose at the beginning of the game. With this being a mandatory Lord of War RTT, I knew there'd be a very good target in every game, hence the tech there. Then I had 2 squads of 10 Cultists, a squad of 5 Berserkers, a Contemptor with Volkite. Contemptors have core, and Volkite is good if you're rerolling the wounds, right? Then we had a Land Raider, a squad of 5 Las Havocs, 4 Las Cannons, and then a Plasma Gun on the champion because of points. And we had a Khorne Lord of Skulls. I started every game with 3 CP. Reason for that is the Khorne Lord of Skulls could go into strategic reserve. The base part of the Lord of Skulls is actually exactly 6 inches wide, so you can strap reserve him legally and he can come on and do his stuff. And again, this was a piece of tech building that 3 CP available, so knowing if my opponent was like Tau or something with a lot of early shooting, I could just hide the Lord of Skulls, obscure everything else in my army, and really sort of frustrate their alpha abilities to wipe me off the table. Okay, so it was an RTT, 3 games. I played 3. I went 2-1, which I was super happy with. My first game was against Phil. Phil won our season last year, the local Gemhammer season. He's a very strong player, wins several events, or normally places very high. He's a Sisters main, but I know he also plays Slanesh Demons, but I think Sisters has at least been his main army for the last couple of years. We've played once before and he beat me, but this is my revenge because I got the win here. So he had Chaos Knights. I can't remember the exact list, but it was one of the big knights, a bunch of the baby knights, then he had a Keeper of Secrets and a squad of Demonettes. We played on GW layout B, I think the one with the 2 central mini ruins, and it was on mission 11, recover the relics. So this was a really tough match. I didn't favour myself going into it just because of the amount of shooting he had, like decent range shooting, and also the combat, like the baby knights, when they have like the melter on one hand and the claw on the other or whatever it is, they're really good. And then obviously you've got a Keeper of Secrets in there, which is no joke. So I did actually manage to win this game, 85 to 66, which I was super chuffed with. And that was really down to one of these special abilities we got to use. I'm going to save that for the last section because it was really quite a funny moment, actually. The second game, I ended up going against Tyranids. Every time it doesn't matter if I win or lose my first game, I seem to play Tyranids round 2. Great. This was against David. He ended up actually winning the whole event, and I lost this 41 to 87. Another really cool army. He had the Haradan, which is the huge flying Tyranid. Then he had a Flyron, Turvagon, a whole bunch of Gaunts, some warriors, the smitey brain bugs that do 37 million mortal wounds when they smite you, all that stuff. It was a really cool list, really well painted. I should have some photos I'll be able to put up on the screen while I'm talking. But like I said, I lost that one. Won't say I lost it because of the abilities, because that's not fair to David. He beat me fair and square. But they had a very frustrating impact, which I'll talk about again later. Then the third game, I went against Colin, another great local player, a very strong player. I think he's beaten my arch nemesis several times. His Discord name is Garrett Slayer, and Garrett is my enemy. But yeah, so he ran Sisters of Battle with an Imperial Knight. And we actually elected, it was the end of the day, everyone was kind of tired. We elected not to use the special abilities in our game and just have a sort of fair fight, I suppose you could say, in our third game. And it was a really good game though, like super fun. I managed to scratch the win 80-73, which I was very, very happy with because I thought I was losing it by the midpoint, but then I got some good trades late on. Anyway, it was another super fun game, really good, a really great opponent. All my opponents were really fun, really good players, not a single bad thing about that. Well, not a single bad thing about the event, totally. Okay, so let's move on and talk about the importance of this type of event. So obviously, like I mentioned at the beginning, supporting charities and helping your local communities is obviously a really important thing. Typically, if you attend church or another, you have another religion, that sort of thing will probably ask you to help your local communities. If you're part of local organisations, you'll be asked to, support the community. I know there's lots of groups in this part of the world, like the Shriners and things like that do this, and that's great. Any way we can support those more in need than us, those who are down on their luck or whatever, it's just a good thing to do. And being able to incorporate that into 40k, which is my main hobby, it's the thing where I get my fun and my relaxation from, is good. And on this channel, haven't really done much this year because it's been a kind of weird year, but supporting charity was always something that I wanted to be a big part of the Red Part. We did a lot of stuff in the first couple of years of the channel, the first year and a half, and we do have things in the works for basically the Codex release, the World Eaters Codex release that we're going to be trying to work on. But nevertheless, being involved in supporting people is a good thing no matter what. How you choose to do it is obviously up to you, but I always recommend people are engaged in uplifting their local communities. It's just a good thing to do. And this was just a great avenue for that. It was a great vehicle to support because I could pay money and donate items, get something in return which made my experience more fun and more enjoyable and just ridiculous in some situations. But then I know all that stuff I donated is going to help people. So it was like an absolute win. The second point about this kind of event, this kind of fun, extra rules kind of thing, it really emphasises bringing fun back into the game sometimes, and this is probably more at GTs and bigger, but I know for myself, even at an RTT, I can take it far too seriously. My last RTT, my last Gemhammer run, I was 0-2 and I ended up dropping. This was, there was a lot of stuff going on, and I just wasn't feeling it. I've played through and gone 0-3 before. I don't normally drop, but sometimes you go to an event and it just hits you wrong, and you have a couple bad results, and you just don't feel it. This event added another layer on top, like the randomness, the silliness, the jokes and everything, and really brought that fun back to the forefront. And even though, again, it was competitive, I was obviously trying to beat my opponents in every game, it was also about having fun and like face palming when someone did something ridiculous to you. So it's a good way to bring that back into especially your smaller events. It can definitely work at larger events, but I think in your RTTs and stuff, it's just a good thing to throw in there once in a while and just mix it up and just remind people how much fun this is. It's a game. It's supposed to be fun. You're not supposed to get stressed out or burnt out or upset by your results. Also, I really feel like whilst we only ended up having 8 players at this RTT, typically the Gemhammers sell out within 24 hours. They actually created a Patreon, and one of the perks is, early buy into the RTTs, which was the prime reason I signed up for their Patreon, so I can make sure I get a ticket day one when an RTT or GT is announced. Normally run 18-player events, and that's based purely on the fact that our local gaming stores only have that many tables available, or 9 or 10 of tables available. But whilst this was a smaller one, it did really feel like everyone there was kind of like bonding a bit more, because this was more about there was a lot of involvement in other people's games. You could go and impact other people's games by doing this, and this happened to me several times. But it really sort of like helped bring our local community, the Gemhammer sort of competitive scene, a bit closer. I think like more involvement, more engagement with ourselves and as a team, as a group, impacting the local area, which was just a really positive thing. And also, I will say, like, obviously I run World Eaters, and ever since the beginning of 8th edition, World Eaters haven't been a competitive army, haven't been a faction that people would seriously take with hopes of winning a GT or anything like that. Even with the 9th edition Chaos Space Marine book, we are arguably the worst sub-faction. It's certainly in the bottom 2, I would say. That may change with the codex. I'm not salty about this or anything. That's just a fact, right? So, you know, you go up against Tyranids or Harlequins, you're like, okay, this is an uphill struggle straight away. It always is, it always has been. That's the choice I've made, that's the choice us World Eaters players, or anyone who plays a lower tier faction, that's the choice we make. We love the faction, we want to play with them. But having these weird extra abilities really added another level of dynamism, of balance in a way, because there were things I could do which could utterly cripple my opponent, and did, giving me more of an equal playing field, where maybe player skill was genuinely or generally balanced. You know, you take a bad army against a good army and the two players are equal, the player with the good army is probably going to win if player skill is balanced, because that's just how it works. Nothing you can do about that, you just play a better army. Or you become a better player to, you know, mitigate that difference by being a better player than your opponent. But this kind of injected some life, some, you know, a little bit of extra oomph, and gave me a few more resources and tools to use. Essentially allowed me to pay to win for 2 games of 3, which was, you know, it added a lot to the event. But yeah, there's some of the positive things about and why it's important to do this kind of thing, I think. Okay, finally we're going to talk about how I actually cheated, what the cheats were, what was going on to actually impact the game outside of the normal rules. So I should have on the screen now somewhere, probably covering my face, I don't know, all the types of abilities that could be used. Anyone could use these. There were sort of individual restrictions on them, when they could be played, if they could be played on other tables, things like that. And the points value was essentially, you know, if it was a 5-point ability, you had to have 5 points of resources that you donated, whether through cash or, you know, items and things. For instance, I think like a toothbrush was worth 1 point. So, you know, you would build those up. Anyway, so I'm just going to go highlight a few of these. These are the ones I actually used in games. So the first game, I think I mentioned this when I briefly talked about against Phil and his Chaos Knights. Phil said that he hadn't really read through this. Me being the whack player that I am, I'd studied these abilities and kind of like adjusted my list to be able to best use them. So early in the game, I want to say it may have been round 1 or round 2, tried to put some shots, or declared some shots into my squad of Havocs, which I'd revealed out to, you know, have a good position. They were quite vulnerable. And I think he declared his big knight, with the big plasma cannon and all the other stuff, going into the Havocs, because he knew about their ability to reroll wounds against him and stuff like that. So I spent some points and turned my 5-man Havoc squad into a knight, into an Imperial Knight for the turn. And this was called an I'll Form the Head. So it's basically Voltron. You use the 5 models, you take them off the table, and then the TO Charles provided a couple knights for us to use. You place the knight down and you get that knight until the end of the turn. So I chose, it didn't matter which knight I chose, but I think I chose the combat knight because he looked cooler. And he tanked, I believe, all the shooting from Phil's army. He did die, so I did end up losing my Havocs, but it meant that that squad of 5 Havocs took an entire Chaos Knights shooting round, leaving the rest of my army available to do what the hell I wanted with. So that was a super fun one. And I can't remember if I used this against Phil. I know I definitely used it in the second game, so I'll talk about it in that context. This was Olcott's Webway malfunction. So what this allowed you to do for 5 points was take an enemy model at the end of their movement phase, take an enemy non-character model and place it in either deployment zone anywhere you wanted. So, of course, going against Tyranids with a Harridan, he moved that Harridan out, he had all his positioning right, and I think this is what actually cost me the game. One of the things that cost me the game. I didn't really need to worry about the Harridan at first. But I moved it back into his deployment zone. He did still get some line of sight because he's so big. There was nowhere to actually hide it where he couldn't see anything. But it was not optimal shooting for him because the Harridan's got some very scary shooting, it turns out. So I moved that, and he was very confused. I was like, hey, that's the rules, man. So then basically every round I would move his Harridan back and he would move my Lord of Skulls back, and neither of them had much of an impact on the game. And one turn, his Gaunt Swarm was protecting all his characters, so I moved the Gaunt Swarm back instead and managed to take out a couple of the characters and stuff, but the points had already got away from me then. One of the things that did happen, which was pretty crazy, a couple of guys on another table, I don't know if their game had finished early or they was just like, fuck it, let's go and meme some people. They came over and there was another ability. Let me just check, I didn't write this one down. So this one is called Dorian's Deadly Space Debris. You play it at the end of the battle round, you choose a point on the table, and all units within 6 inches take D6 mortal wounds. So originally, both players were spending it buying this for 4 points each and putting it on my Tyranid's opponent, which, I mean, inside I was like, oh my god, this is great. But realistically, I don't want to win a game because my opponent entire castle just took 2d6 mortal wounds each. So we kind of negotiated a bit, and the TO came over because everyone was just laughing about it, and they agreed, or they decided to put one on my opponent's castle and one on mine, and then we changed it to D3 mortal wounds because it was just going to kill everything basically. So the frustrating part was, which is a dice game, but my opponent he took like several mortal wounds on his characters, like on the Flyrant and stuff. I think he took 5 or 6 on the Gaunts, but he had a Tervigon which respawns Gaunts, so that didn't really impact anything. Then on my castle, did 5 mortal wounds to Abaddon. Luckily I was allowed to just keep the phase cap there, so he went down to 6. Killed a Havoc, or maybe 2 Havocs, killed 2 Berserkers, killed 4 or 5 Cultists. Quite a lot of damage was done to mine, but most importantly was Abaddon losing one of his phases. Like, he was now down to 6 wounds, which meant I had to be much more cagey with him rather than risking, like, maybe turning him into Creations of Bile or something and running him out there and killing something and then waiting to be killed in combat by the Flyrant or something like that. So that was quite frustrating, but I mean, it was still fun. Looking back, it was actually hilarious, especially over that game. We just kept moving each other's units everywhere. That was super fun. We also used what was called the GW Special. So this one, if you're engaged in combat, the combat doesn't happen. You play 3 games of rock, paper, scissors, and the winner deals 2d6 mortal wounds to the opponent, which was great. I love the name for that one because there was an event a few months ago where the pairings for the finals, I believe, there was like a tie or something, and GW decided to, the best way to resolve that was to have rock, paper, scissors. Why they didn't choose a dice roll off, I don't know, but hey, whatever. So yeah, that was that. One of the other abilities that was used was Robert's Merry Slaneshmus. Sorry, I'm getting a bit stuffy here, a bit congested. Robert's Merry Slaneshmus, which was basically Honor the Prince. It gave you an automatic 6. You could turn any dice roll, including 1 dice in a charge, into a 6. But if you bought that, your opponent would get a free auto 6 for any time in the round. So it was a balanced one. This got used a few times. Frustratingly, I was banking on it in my second game versus the Tyranids because I moved my Khorne Lord of Skulls out. I knew I had a 9-inch charge, so I'm thinking, okay, I turn 1 into a 6. If I fail it, should be okay. Pretty good odds if you're turning 2 dice, one of them into a 6 on a 9-inch charge, but my opponent kept throwing my Khorne Order Skulls back, so I didn't get to use it there. But it did crop up in games, and it's super fun. Made some clutch saves with it and things like that. So those were the abilities, and hopefully, like I said, I had them on the screen so you could see the overall. I just want to sum this up now. Like I said, pretty consistently through this video, I think it's really important to have these kind of events, have these interesting changes, the Highlander, the mandatory Lord of War, the charity abilities which could impact the games and other people's games. It added so much. It made it such a fun event overall, and I hope all the other players, I hope my opponents had fun games. And it's just a great thing to do. So I would really ask, number one, talk to your local gaming scene, talk to your TO or your organisation that you're part of, and see if you can do something like this. It's very simple. Find a local charity or non-profit or organisation you'd like to support. Reach out to them, get a line of communication going if they need items donated, and it's very simple. The players who show up bring items. Like the TO is going to have to do the legwork here. They've got to do a lot of the heavy lifting, the transporting any donated items and stuff. But hopefully they're on board with this. And buy yourself powers in an RTT to just make it fun. It's a win-win. I really hope that we can see more of these happening. I know there are charity events. I know Charity Hammer exists and things like that. But I'd like to see more of these. And number two, like I mentioned at the beginning, there is a donate link down below somewhere. It'd be great if you could donate $1 or $2 to this organisation, St. Vincent de Paul. You're helping out someone. I know this is probably not an organisation local to you, but I had a great time at this event. My TO and the team put in a lot of work to make this such a super fun thing, and anything I can do to help that, I've got a small platform here with the YouTube channel. I figure maybe we can persuade a couple of you folks out there to donate a few dollars. If you do, if there's a comments box, which I believe there is on the donation button or on the donation page of the website, just say Gem Hammer sent you, which is the gaming group I'm involved in here. Just say Gem Hammer sent you, and hopefully that filters through and gets a few more dollars out there to help people out. But yeah, that's the end of this video. Again, thanks if you've watched all the way through. Thanks for sticking it out. Apologies for the clickbait title, but I really wanted to draw people in for the purposes of helping out the charity, basically. So yeah, that's it for this one, folks. Until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and kill main bird.